Right, it's about 9 o'clock. Yes? It's on, there we go. You're welcome. Okay, so once again, we are commencing the special meeting and budget workshop meeting on April 24th, 2025. And I'm calling the meeting to order. Posting of the agenda has been posted, correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. All right, so item 3 on our agenda is public comment for items on the agenda. And anyone present today who would like to address the council, you have 3 minutes. Anyone attending on Zoom, 3 minutes. Is there anyone present in the council today who wishes to be heard? No one present in the council chambers. Is anyone, or in the town hall, I mean, is anyone present on Zoom?
There are no raised hands online.
All right. Well then, we will move on to item 4, appointment of the mayor.
I nominate Julie to be mayor.
All right. I was just going to, for anyone.
Oh, introduce it, sorry.
For anyone, no, that's okay.
Does it need an introduction?
We're all ready to go here, but just for the benefit of anyone watching on Zoom or is not familiar with our process, we rotate serving as mayor. And for generally a one-year term, the term doesn't always align well with our election schedule. But anyway, this is the end of my year as mayor. So our tradition has been that whoever has previously served as vice mayor would then become the mayor. This is something, as everything we do, is always subject to council approval. But that, as long as I've been on the council, and I think for many years before that, that was our procedure. So with that introduction, we have a motion. Does anyone wish to discuss? Well, let's have a motion, then any discussion on the motion, then we'll vote. All right? Was it seconded? No. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So we will vote.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Dowling?
Aye.
Mayor Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, Julie has been elected mayor. McMillan.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Bill, for such a tremendous job over the last year. And I know you will be recognized later officially.
Thank you, Julie.
So the next item is item number 5, appointment of Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to nominate Elizabeth Robbins for Mayor Pro Tem.
Second?
Any discussion? I assume no. Go ahead, Cindy.
Mayor McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Dowling?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Councilmember Salter?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, Mayor Pro Tem Robbins has been voted in.
I think the last time we did this, it was all online because of COVID. So this is very gratifying to be in person here, seeing everybody. Number 5 is review and confirm our town goals. Krista, I know you're so efficient, my goodness. We've changed positions and you already have the nameplates. Oh, gosh. Cindy, thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, give me that gavel, please.
One pause.
Yes.
I think it's a Cadbury egg, but I'm not sure. Uh-oh. Oh, very nice. It's a plaque? Thank you very much, thank you.
Oh, wow, thank you, thank you. I love those UCLA colors, too. Thank you. It's perfect. Thank you, Cindy. All right, back to business. Number 6, review and confirm our town goals.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First, on behalf of your town staff, I'd like to thank former Mayor Bill Kircher, current council member, for your year of service as mayor. We appreciate your leadership, and it's been a real pleasure to spend more time working with you throughout the year. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Krista, and pleasure working with you and with Julie as well for the past year.
Yeah, wonderful. And Julie, looking forward to working with you this coming year. So, okay. So let's see, we're starting off just with a quick look at our town goals. And I've got them on the screen for folks at home too. So 9 years ago, the town council developed 6 goals, and then the 7th was added 4 years ago. The goals guide staff's development of the draft fiscal year ending 26 budget, which is before you today. And if the council could please take a look at these goals, and if you have any comments, edits, or refinements to these goals, we'd be happy to accept those and update them. The goals are also right there.
I have something for people to consider. Matt and I had an excellent meeting yesterday with Rich and Krista, and the thing that I took away from that meeting was our need to better communicate to the public. So I'm wondering if we could add something about enhancing communication, possibly in goal number 1, just so that we have it front and center. And then I think it's appropriate to discuss this now. Along those lines, I was thinking it would be great if one of us could be at the post office the Wednesday before the council meeting, just to be available to engage the public for a couple of hours. I'm willing to do it every month, or we could have a rotation. And then we've talked about in the past updating the format of the morning after, because most of the content needs to be prepared before our decisions are made. So I think as part of the enhanced communication, we can start thinking about how to better communicate decisions made by the council. Thoughts?
Well, maybe the morning after should come out on Monday instead of Friday. And then if there's something that is, newsworthy and noteworthy from a meeting, there could be space in the morning after to add it in. Though it might be that, staff is often recovering on Friday from the meeting, and that might not be the best day to rework the morning after, but maybe it doesn't have to be the morning after. I mean, it's a catchy name, but maybe it could be, the week after, and it could be sometime a little bit later.
I think that's a really good suggestion. Bill?
Yeah, agree on the morning after. This is something that really needs to be in almost final form by the time we get to our council meeting, and so it doesn't really reflect any controversial item or item that couldn't be dealt with fairly quickly. that happened at the previous council meeting, which puts it over for a month. Yes, the IJ covers some of our meetings, and there are other ways to get the message out, but I totally agree that that would be a good idea. Whether we rename it or not the week after, I'm not sure, but I think it's a good idea. I also think somebody going to the post office once a month, that used to be was it Katie did that? Katie Hartung? Carla, too. Yeah, they would just say, I will be at the, out in front, I think Beach did it, too.
Yeah, Beach did
At
it,
the
yeah.
post office and the time. And so anybody who wasn't aware of that could just pass by them and say, oh, the mayor is in, or whoever, the council member, ask your questions. It's a great chance to just talk to people casually that we might not hear from otherwise.
Why
and
not
get a better
Thursday?
sense of the community.
Why not Thursday,
What's that?
Oh,
I'm sorry,
I
Terry.
totally agree with sitting in front of the post. I'm happy to do that. It's a great way to meet people, and having a sign say, talk to the mayor.
why not
Office hours.
Talk to the
Thursday?
mayor, talk to the person from the town council, whoever it is that's sitting there. And the other thing, I think, is if it doesn't take a lot of time, we should look at the morning after or the week after. How many people get it? How many people actually open it? And if it is going to be a way that we communicate, then whoever is sitting out in front of the post office needs to try to sign people up who don't get it. So we can have as many people who live in Ross get that.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
For the post office, I mean, I wondered why not, I think it had been Thursday, the day of the meeting. Maybe that's an even better day because people can talk about that night's agenda. It could be Wednesday or Thursday, but I think it had been Thursday, the day of the meeting. If for the morning after, I mean, maybe we should start printing some hard copies and see if a stack of them would stay on one of those post office tables and people could look at it. And then again, on the Thursday, when someone's sitting in front of the post office, the month before's newspaper could be there, and that might be a way of people seeing what they're missing, and then they would sign up.
I totally agree with all of the suggestions, and I'm happy to sit at the post office.
Okay, awesome. Krista.
I'd just like to add that Councilmember Dowling last year suggested that we start putting hard copies of the morning after on the bulletin board in front of to the left of the post office entry. And so we've been doing that for probably about 10 months now. And it's a box that's kind of somewhat protected from the elements where you can just pull out a morning after, and then staff checks it regularly to make sure that the copies are kept supplied.
Can I ask a question? So do you find that people take them?
Yes.
People do take them out, so, okay, good.
Any other comments about our town goals, suggestions, edits?
So you would like to, I was just, while you were having your discussion, I was looking at the town goals, and we could add an eighth one, which says something like enhance and increase communication with town residents or with the public. Or you could add it to number 1.
I kind of like it separate because I
Yeah.
think that provides additional emphasis. How do people feel?
Right, a communication goal.
Yes.
Though maybe it isn't enhance, but maybe like provide, or, communicate town, we can sort of wordsmith it later, but communicate town business and affairs effectively or something broadly.
In some ways, it's like a communication between the community and
Two-way.
It's really providing efficient communication or effective, something, maybe that's the word we're looking for. So once we make the suggestion, will this come back at a future meeting to approve, Krista?
Absolutely, if that's what the council desires.
Thank you. Matt?
I like what Councilmember Dowling said, is that effective communication from the council, but also soliciting feedback and input from the community I would say that would be part of the goal, so that we feel like, I think that's the hardest part of our job, is understanding how the community feels. And I think we could do a better job of surveying or reaching out and trying to get more feedback from them. I know it's hard, but I think that's a good part of the goal could be this two-way communication.
Good.
Okay, great. We'll bring that back at a future agenda.
Great, thank you, Krista. Number 7 is the town council to consider a request for fiscal year 2026 funding in the amount of $25,500 from the Ross Property Owners Association, and provide direction to staff regarding the amount of funding to include in the fiscal year 26 budget. Should it be $25,500 to the Ross Property Owners Association? Right?
Just a moment here.
Yes.
Town council to consider. Oh, it's to consider the request that was from the RPOA, but I agree that could have been worded a little bit more efficiently.
Just want to make sure
Thank
everyone
you.
understands what we're doing.
Yes.
Okay, Krista, staff report.
Certainly. So, let's see, there's a staff report in your packet that has some information about the more recent history of the town's relationship with the Ross Property Owners Association and the way that the town has granted some requests for funding from the organization for the last handful of years. Attached to the staff report is the request from the Ross Property Owners Association, and it does include a report on their activities for the past year. Some of the items in the report are from previous years too. So it has some photos, and I'm not sure if Mr. Koblik, their president, is here this afternoon. Oh, hi, Jeff. Good morning. Okay. So if the council would like to hear from Mr. Koblik?
Yeah, Jeff, if you have anything to add, that'd be great.
Yeah, just wanted to express we appreciate working with the town and staff and Ross Rec, and we look at it as a partnership. Put on events like Live on the Commons this Friday from 5 to 8 o'clock, and we just had the Ross Auxiliary put on the Spring Fling last weekend. It was a very successful event. So we're the hanging flowers, I think, are going up this week. So we got those coming up. So anyway, as you guys know, we've been working together for years and years, and it's been a partnership. The town's contributed some. We raised a lot of money ourselves, and ultimately the money's all going back to the town. So, and we put in tons of volunteer hours as part of that, which we're not only contributing money, more importantly, we're contributing the people and the hours to get these things done. So it's been working great with Krista and Rich and everybody in the town. So we would look forward to another year ahead, and everything we can do to support the town, we'll do. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you to RPOA for everything that you all do. We really appreciate it. Comments, discussion about the recommendation of $25,500? Elizabeth?
Well, I think it's really great that the town can help support RPOA. The events that RPOA has brought are so popular. When you look at the list, you think, really, do we need this many events? But everyone comes to all the events, and since they're all, wildly successful, the answer is yes, indeed. The town needs this many. The town wants this many events, and they're all supported by town residents. And so I think that's terrific, because I don't think that the town could do this without RPOA. And as you mentioned, Jeff, it's not just the money, it's the volunteers, and your group is really putting on the event. So I think that's wonderful. I have one tiny comment. I think that for RPOA's projects, I think we always want to be sure that RPOA's projects are also like town-wide goals. And I know there have been some differences of opinion about the history walk plaques, and I think we just want to be sure everyone's on board before, RPOA goes out too far on a project that somehow doesn't have support. But the support for virtually everything that RPOA does is vast, and RPOA is just a huge benefit to our community. So I support the request for town funds again. Thank you.
Anybody else? Terry?
I agree. And I also want to thank the RPOA for really making an effort to make sure that all of the events are intergenerational, which is great. So thank you.
Totally agree with all the positive comments. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, RPOA and Accelerate, for everything you do for our town.
So I completely support the request. The one item that I hope to hear more from RPOA is some input from the community. I thought it was very helpful that RPOA held the event on the fire station, which had, I think, probably 60 people show up to talk about it. So however way the council can be informed, how the community feels, or if RPOA can survey. I know Beach Cool mentioned that before he left. Sometimes, again, it's so hard for us to decide when we don't know how the community feels on an issue. So if we could have more input and RPOA could help us solicit input, I would love to have more sort of bi-directional communication. So anyway, again, I support this completely.
I guess my view on RPOA holding meetings on substantive issues that are otherwise within the purview of the council is a problem to me. I think it's beyond the scope of what RPOA is supposed to do. So I'm not supportive of having kind of parallel procedural substantive meetings that should otherwise be in front of the council. So I would caution RPOA from having similar meetings in the future when there should be a discussion at the council level instead of at the RPOA level, where experts who are familiar with the issues would be present to provide testimony about the issues instead of just churning by the public. I was also wondering, Jeff, there was discussion a few years ago about redoing Kittle Park. I think Janelle Hobart was working on that. Is that still on your to-do list? You need to go back to the, sorry.
Thanks for reminding us, Julie. Yeah, we should put that back on the list and try and move forward on that. I think, I don't know, now it's going back, but maybe it sort of fell off the list because of the town, redoing the Civic Center here. And I think that was going to be part of it. But we're happy to go ahead and maybe do some interim landscaping, support that with some contributions and try and get some volunteer help.
Thank you. I would love to help with that, if that's possible. Thank you. Terry?
I was just going to sort of combine what the two of you are talking about in terms of communication. And maybe one way to do this would be if the RPOA, if there's something substantial that needs to be discussed with community input, it would be great if the RPOA would encourage membership to attend the town council meetings where it could be, the information could be shared in sort of one place.
Yeah.
That's a
I
good
think
suggestion. Thank
Ultimately,
you.
that's what we did in this situation. I think we were surprised. These people showed up. It was, well, I don't think it was, and then we quickly said, look, this is a town council issue, and so go to the town council issue. So I think that's ultimately what we did, and so.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mayor, I'd just like to expand on Mr. Kobluch's comment that the Kittle Park is part of the area of the Civic Center project, and RPOA did provide valuable input as part of the outreach in the preparation of the Public Facilities Master Plan for that. I love the idea of interim work because our project is going to take some time. So that sounds lovely, but I just did want to comment that they did provide good input into the process to develop the master plan.
Thank you, Krista, for that reminder. It's great. Do we need a motion on this?
No, direction is sufficient.
I think we have sufficient direction.
Thank
Okay,
you very
great.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Number 8, thank you, Jeff, for being here. Number 8, Town Council to review and provide guidance to the town manager on the draft fiscal year 2025-26 budget beginning July 1, 2025, ending June 30, 2026.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just one moment, please, for me to get set up here. Okay. Mayor and Council, I'd like to thank you for devoting much of your morning, and hopefully just the morning, but we do have until 2 p.m. set aside on your calendars for our annual budget workshop. And I also like to introduce members of our town team who are participating today and who may be called upon to answer any questions that the council or the community may have during this workshop. We have our consulting accountant, Elizabeth Ford. She is on Zoom during this meeting. And then here in the council chambers, we have our town clerk, Cindy Martell. Big shout out to Cindy, too, for arranging for our refreshments and doing all the things that she does. And we have Mary behind the council chambers, who is continuing to do her work on streaming this meeting. Yes, thank you. Our recreation manager, Maureen Borthwick, is here. Our planning and building director, Roberta Feliciano, is here. Our police chief, Pata, is here. And our public works director, Richard Simonich, is also here. Thanks to everyone. We worked as a team to put this draft budget together. Okay. So just to overview, you've already taken care of number 1, congratulations, which is to review and confirm the town goals. I have, in my PowerPoint presentation, we have a few slides about accomplishments that your staff team and the council has made over this past year. Got just my favorite slide about elements of organizational capacity. We have our 5-year financial forecast. We have a few slides that address the very important issue of pension liabilities. Then we've got, most of our slides are about the upcoming budget, fiscal year 25-26. After I finish with my slides, Rich Simonich is going to go through the 5-year capital improvement plan. If you recall, last February, at the request of Councilmember Salter, Rich Simonich did provide a pretty substantive presentation to the council and the community last February about the CIP, so that his presentation today will be more abbreviated than you've received in years past. And then we'll have some next steps and wrap up. Okay, already done the goals. So I don't take for granted this, is that we have a very productive town council. So I'd like to congratulate that, and that is absolutely our first very fantastic accomplishment from last year. The council works together well and gets a lot done. We have a financially healthy and a proactive budget. We have a clean audit for fiscal year ending 24. Just a reminder that the public safety parcel tax was renewed a year ago in March 2024 with 78% voter approval. That was a big accomplishment. The council continues to increase their savings for the Civic Center project. And the council continues every year to do optional pay downs of its unfunded pension liability. Not all communities and councils have the fortitude to do that, so I want to congratulate you on that. Absolutely accomplishment, maintained a safe community with Chief Pata and our officers and our fire department and the paramedics and all of our town staff. We recruited and transitioned to a few new staff members. The housing element was certified. Do you remember last summer? So I'm counting that for this year, because that was a huge undertaking by council and the staff for over a couple of years. And implementation has begun. Our staff brought 28 design review and conditional use permit projects through your advisory design review group, and then 26 of those went on to council, because a reminder to the community is that in Ross, the council actually serves as the design review body, and that is just from the first 10 months of the year. So they're still bringing forward. In fact, your next meeting in May is likely to have 4 design review projects coming to the council. So that is the everyday work that our staff does. And one of those projects was the approval of Magic's Phase 1 project that they had been working on for quite a while. And I believe that came through ADR in January and soon after to the council. So that allows them to start working on their plans to renovate their facilities. 76 encroachment permits and 43 tree permits were issued by our Public Works Director and our Public Works staff, and that's just in the first 9 months of the year. Public Works staff completed our town hall parking and ADA accessibility improvements. With the help of funding from RPOA, a new sports storage shed was installed on our common. It's a good partnership between RPOA and our Public Works Department, and it was led by Maureen Borthwick to respond to that quickly. Extensive cybersecurity actions were taken throughout the year. The council supported that funding last June, I recall, with a new contract with Marin IT, and Cindy Martell, our town clerk, does a lot with coordinating with Marin IT to get these all on board, and we really appreciate the council's leadership on this when we changed our email addresses, and you have to use our email addresses, and you know, it's a bit of a pain for everybody, but it's, as we all hear in the news, is something we have to do. And we also have had to follow up because the Marin County Grand Jury has had now just a couple of reports about cybersecurity in the past few years. You know, I was looking back through all the work that our staff, our departments have done in this past year, and there definitely is a theme. There are many themes, but one of the themes is pedestrian bicycle safety. This isn't even all of the things, but it's primarily with our Chief Pata taking a lead on this, his officers, Rich Simonich here. But some of the examples of the items that were worked on, and many of these items come to the council for your consideration during the year. The 15 mile per hour speed limits near Ross School and Branson were installed. Chief Pata and the officers have been doing weekend bicycle safety enforcement and education, the cyclists, many of whom come through town. Chief Pata has been excellent with his collaboration with Ross School, which led to a school requirement or prohibition on bringing Class 2 e-bikes to campus. And then Chief Pata and the school have been doing a lot of education to families and students, and with Branson students about that, and officers out in the field. Shady Lane Pathways rehabilitation, about 700 feet, was completed in this past fiscal year. Implementation of the daylighting law, which was a state law which prohibits parking within 20 feet. Rich, is that right?
20 feet ahead, and then I believe it's 15 feet behind the crosswalk in the direction of traffic.
Thank you. So staff went and identified the locations around town. Luckily, we didn't have that many parking spaces that had to be removed, but 2 parking spaces in front of the post office had to be removed. That is an important crosswalk there, and it has been a bit of a learning or transition for our residents. Laurel Grove Pathways Phase 2 project was completed. It seems to be very well received and well used by our community, especially students walking down to Ross School. Chief Pata has ordered a new mobile speed sign that is in the budget, the current year budget, to be deployed in trouble spots when it comes in to remind speeders to slow down. And Public Works Department began replacement of the 3 pedestrian bridges at Natalie Coffin Green Park. So we have a small staff, and look at all that stuff that was done, and I don't even think that's a complete list, but it was the ones that I could come up with. And that was, this has been something that the council has been focused on these past few years, and we've heard a lot from the community. Okay, successfully recruited 2 new police officers. Not easy, and that is, credit goes to Chief Pata for his work on recruiting 2 fantastic new police officers. Staff continued to support the Age-Friendly Task Force and increased community involvement in that initiative. Made some progress on the Winship Bridge replacement project. We continue, and we must continue to invest in our town equipment and vehicles. This past year, we did purchase 2 new patrol cars. One of them is a hybrid. Just this past month, the council adopted or introduced a ordinance to clean up our Muni Code. And at your next council meeting, you will be considering formal adoption of that ordinance. And that is something that has taken a considerable amount of staff time, hadn't been done for many, many years. We needed to get it done. Staff is also, I'm going to think positively, and our safety element is going to be completed. It's going to be brought to council at your May meeting. Staff updated the ADU, which is the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, earlier this year, so that it is in compliance with state law. We streamlined design review process for exterior coverings that came forward from a resident and was supported by the council. So we took care of that. Another theme was disaster preparedness and wildfire prevention. So in addition to all the work that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority does for Ross and for the entire county, at a local level, we have a lot of work that was done this past year and work that still needs to be done. Our Chief Mahoney and our planning director brought forward the new state fire maps to the council at the last meeting. They will come forward for final adoption at your next meeting. Ross Valley Fire Department led the charge on getting some large vegetation removal projects completed in the town of Ross and in the neighboring areas of town and Selma, really important. Our Chief Pata has really demonstrated a lot of leadership. Just this past month, he put together the first Ross Valley Public Safety Chiefs, so that's fire chiefs and police chiefs, pre-fire season meeting was held at Magic. So that is trying to get ourselves even better prepared and regional collaboration on gearing up for fire season. Chief Pata also started an initiative, a red flag initiative, to begin deploying warning signs at key areas for red flag days, catch people's attention and direct them to Fire Safe Marin and other materials that can provide information to the public about what they should be doing when there is a red flag day. And then also road clearance, education, and enforcement. So this is a law that's already on the books, but hasn't been very well adhered to or enforced in the town. And the importance of evacuation and getting our first responders to wildfire sites and other emergency sites is important. So we're continuing to work on that. This is my last slide of accomplishments. There are just so many. Our Ross Recreation Department started and nurtured a successful partnership with Magic to have classes over there and events. And I just shout out, compliment to them is it's been a great, they've also, I know, have been letting us use their space and to community groups for either low cost or no cost. So that's really a great resource for us. Modernization of council chambers next week. It's going to be a mess in here, but led by Maureen Borthwick in our recreation department and a lot of work by our public works staff. We're getting this project done and we'll be able to better utilize this nice facility. The Recreation Department added a lot of tot and senior recreation program. A lot of progress was made on our Bolinas Storm Drain Phase 2 project and the underground utility districts, and that's attributed to Rich Simonich. We also responded to council directives. So these items were largely initiated by the council, such as you considered at several meetings pickleball policies, the demolition streamlining. We had several substantive meetings regarding the coming fire station closure and paramedics. You spent some time at multiple council meetings on updating your council procedures manual. We also brought forward at the council's request an item to potentially move the municipal election to an ongoing November date. And so we will be bringing that back to council for formal consideration. You also had an agenda item earlier this year to talk about the Roscommon playfields, and you also had that special discussion this past February about the CIP. And so I just wonder, is there anything you would all like to add to the list? Because it's important to celebrate.
Yeah, Matt.
I just wanted to bring up on the financial committee, appointing a new financial advisor. And I know that it's still an ongoing initiative, but we've done such a good job saving our money and I think investing it wisely so that we earn the best return on that money to help alleviate any budget concerns. So I think that was a big accomplishment on the finance committee.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Krista, how are we going to communicate all these wonderful accomplishments to our residents?
Thank you, Mayor. We can do that a couple of ways, just off the top of my head, or we can brainstorm with our town clerk, who handles a lot of our public information on the website, and also a special article or maybe a series of articles, because there are so many accomplishments in the morning after. Okay, so I'm going to write that down.
Thank you. That's great.
I just want to say how impressive it is. I mean, it's such a small staff that do such a lot of work. So thank you all. And that's just this year, this past year. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay. Okay, I've showed this to you a few times. I won't go into it long, but I really love it. It's elements of organizational capacity. Stole it from the town of Fairfax a few years ago from their workshop, but so I can't take credit for it. But it just talks about how much capacity do we have as an organization. And the first one is, you as the council have a certain amount of capacity of things that you can consider, review, potentially take action on. And you really have 13 meetings a year. You've got a meeting every month, and then you have this meeting. And occasionally you have some closed sessions, but there's a limited amount of time that you have. So and you've got a lot of different things. In addition, the council here sits as the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board. So that takes up quite a bit of time on your monthly agenda. So your time is limited. Then we have our staff capacity, and really this remains constant. 75% of staff time is devoted just to the day-to-day services. So then you've got emergencies, changing directions, occasionally from the council. Sometimes we might have inadequate tools. But on a positive note, I believe that the council expectations here are, while they are growing these past few years, I believe that they are still modest as compared to some of your councils in neighboring cities. So I'm grateful for that. So thank you. We have a financial capacity. Most of our town funds are allocated to personnel, so we have, and we'll go into this into the financial forecast, but we have very few funds that are, we've got some money for one-time things, maybe a consultant here and there that might be able to help us. For example, Councilmember Salter and Mayor McMillan in a meeting yesterday talked about maybe we need a little bit of help from a communications consultant here and there. So we have a little bit of money to help on particular projects, but not an ongoing position for that purpose. Then, of course, we have a community capacity. People are busy. We have rising complexity of issues. We have rising expectations from the community for communications. That's a good example of a rising expectation. And there is quite a lot of rising divisiveness in all levels of government. And then, of course, we have our external dynamics, state mandates. We have other agencies here in the county, such as the county flood control, economic changes, pension and healthcare costs that are really beyond our control, but yet we have to absorb them, and technological enhancements. So that chart, it just simply makes the point that the town council and the staff have a limited amount of time and attention, and that must be managed with care by the council and by me.
I have just one comment, Krista. I think it would be great to add design review to your chart and their, as a part of their capacity. And I don't know if we've invited them to the May picnic, but it might be it might be nice to invite the design review members to our picnics and our sort of celebrations, and try to reward and thank them for their contributions as well. They do a lot to alleviate the work on the council. And I know we don't get to see them or talk to them as much as we probably should. So if we could try in this year to make an effort to incorporate them and thank them for their service, because it helps so much the town's functioning.
I agree with that. Anybody disagree? Okay, great. Thank you,
That's a
Matt.
great idea.
It's a good suggestion.
Thank you, just writing that down so I didn't lose that. Okay. So moving on then to our 5-year financial forecast. This forecast, it assists the council and management in understanding our ability to fund our current level of services in the future. We need to ask, is our current level of services sustainable? And it's an ability to fund alternative programs and services in the short term and longer term. What does it do? It projects revenues and expenses for fiscal years ending 2026 through 2030 for the town's operating fund. It estimates revenue and expenses based on current town policies and state statutes. It includes a really modest level of capital expenses continuing to be funded by the operating fund. And it does include an additional $200,000 per year through 2030 for pension unfunded accrued liability paydown. These are these optional payments I'll talk a little bit about in a future slide. So for the forecast revenues, property tax will continue to be the largest source of revenue. We contract with a consulting firm called HDL, and they provide us with a report that projects that a 4% growth for property taxes each year. So that's good. Revenue growth will be less than expense growth. So transfers to the facility equipment fund or the capital projects fund are projected to decrease through this 5-year period of time in order to balance the budget. However, again, we're still putting in there a $200,000 pay down every year for the unfunded pension liability. The 5-year forecasts expenses. The expenses for the operating fund are projected to grow approximately 3 to 4% per year, and that excludes one-time expenditures that you might see. Wage and benefits comprise 47% of total expenses. They are estimated to increase 4 to 5% per year moving forward as a whole. Police and fire labor agreements expire this coming June. There's no increase in here in this financial forecast for that, so that we need to have a cushion to be able to accommodate that. Labor costs are expected to increase and will affect this financial forecast. Expenses continued. So in this 5-year forecast, pension costs are stabilizing with the enactment of state pension reform that we call PEPRA. And because the council has been paying down this unfunded pension liability since 2016, so for 9 years. However, CalPERS investment gains and losses contribute to the unpredictability of future costs. Our required pension costs in fiscal year ending '24 were just under $600,000, and that is estimated to increase to $1.1 million per year by fiscal year ending '30. That's what we're required to do. And then on top of it, the council has been doing optional paydowns every year. The fire department JPA costs are budgeted to decrease this year by 8%. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a coming slide. But setting that aside, on an ongoing basis, we expect our fire department costs to increase by 4% every year. So this slide, what it shows, and there is information here, the staff report includes all this information too, if you want to look at it in your staff report in your binders. But what the slide is showing is that the current level of services, are fundable over the next 5 years. And really the key reason is because of the renewal of the public safety parcel tax. Without that, because that generates just over $1 million a year. Without that, there would need to be very, very severe adjustments in the budget. So what this chart also shows is that we are projecting a surplus at the end of the current fiscal year. That's $617,000. Which is primarily attributed to an increase in interest revenues generated by the Capital Projects Fund. So the Capital Projects Fund is the fund where the council you've been saving up money to put towards your civic center remodel. That money is sitting there and it's generating interest. And so that is what's primarily driving this surplus that we expect to have at the end of the current fiscal year. And then if you see on the last line there, the forecast projects much more modest financial surpluses next year. We're only forecasting a $76,000 forecast. And then for the remainder of the 5-year financial forecast, those surpluses are forecast to be pretty modest. But yet, these small surpluses may be able to help fund one-time expenses. But they're not going to be able to absorb ongoing costs for a higher level of services. We just don't have the money for that with the current level of services in place.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Elizabeth probably knows the answer to this. When does our current public safety parcel tax expire?
It's 8.5 years, right?
It's a
10-year
10-year,
tax,
but we did it a year
9 years. It expires in 9 years, right?
It voted last year, but the new one goes into effect this year because we did it a year early.
Oh,
We got approval a year early.
That's right, and so it doesn't kick in. So we
it
have 10 years
starts
from now.
in July, starts in July 2025 and it ends in 2035.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Julie, I have a question too. For the capital project fund, do these slides show that we're continuing to put money into that?
Yes.
And how much per year have we been putting into that?
Let's see. I have a slide at the very end to bring up just for this purpose. So this is the financial forecast. And if you look, and it's going to be hard for you to see all the way down there, but if you look at the very bottom, this is for the operating fund. And so when there has been a savings in the operating fund, a surplus at the end of the year, some of that surplus always stays in that fund. That's our reserve. We have a reserve there, and then we also have a $1.5 million emergency reserve that the council started in the 90s and has never been touched. But in addition, we need to have, our financial policies say we have to have a 30% reserve. That's in the operating fund. So when there's money above and beyond that, and some of the savings has also been, the surplus has been generated by, over these past handful of years, we've had vacancies in the police department. We've had greater than expected interest. There might be a project that gets moved from year to year. But in the last line there, it says transferred to facility/capital projects fund. The town used to, the savings bank used to be called in the facilities and equipment fund, but a couple of years ago, we started a new fund called the capital projects fund, so that's why it says both names. So if you look here in, just recently, in 2024, we transferred $550,000. We budgeted this year $475,000, but we project by the end of this year, we'll be able to transfer $600,000. And then we've got the projections, then the projections are decreasing from that point forward. So what we can tell you is if the council adopts this budget with the transfers to the capital projects fund, by the end of fiscal year ending 26, so a year from now, there will be $11.75 million in the capital projects fund. And that's something to be celebrated, that the council over these years has had that fiscal fortitude to be able to set that aside and not spend it on other things. The capital fund does pay for other things. So for example, we have, and the capital fund is actually in your budget document. Capital projects fund is under the Q tab.
So Krista, it might be helpful, I saw the exhibit on Q, is you have the graphs at the beginning. Maybe we should just have a graph of the capital projects, as it's so large.
Yeah.
A similar graph created showing the year-over-year changes to that fund, then we could easily track it. I think the smaller funds like emergency, where it's just staying the same, aren't necessary, but then it's just nice to be able to see a graph of how it's changed over time.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. Excellent. Rich reminds me, after my presentation, when Rich talks about the CIP, there'll be some information about that there. Okay. So we have it in a few different places, but the good news is you're going to have almost $12 million saved up in a year's time.
And just a question on that, does that include the expenses that we're going to have to pay for the undergrounding of the utilities?
For the first year.
Yeah, that will be included in the CIP when I present that.
Yeah, but the ending budget of 11.75 is not going to reflect the subtraction of the cost to underground the utilities, is it? Or will it?
Well, it'll start, the expenses for undergrounding the utilities here at the Civic Center will start drawing down that balance, starting in around 2026 or 2027,
Okay.
later next year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's some funding in that fund in the upcoming fiscal year ending 26 to put towards that project. And then on a less substantial level, there is some funding in the capital projects fund for the coming year to pay for a project manager and to start doing some environmental studies and things like that. But no, I mean, it's when we start getting into the big architectural phase and all that kind of stuff, it'll start to shrink. Yeah. Okay. Did I address your question,
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Robbins? Okay. All right, now I need to go back real quick, figure out where I was. Okay. Okay, so just quickly to address pension liabilities, pages 5 to 7 in the staff report for this agenda item discusses pension costs and pension liabilities in greater detail. So I'm just going to provide you with a few slides about the basics. So, and then just the town has 5 CalPERS pension plans. 3 are for what we call miscellaneous appointees, which are employees that are not public safety. And then we have 2 for public safety employees. And the reason we have 5 is it's based on their hire date. So for example, one of our 5 pension plans is called the Classic Plan for miscellaneous employees. Well, we don't have any employees in that plan right now. So, but yet we still have liabilities that we have to pay down. So the pension liability is unlike an IRA or a 401k plan. The town has a defined retirement benefit plan through CalPERS, which promises lifetime payments to people that retire. The cost of these future payments is calculated using actuarial assumptions such as life expectancy and rates of return. When those assumptions do not match reality, a liability can occur. The most recent CalPERS valuation report shows an unfunded accrued liability of $6.1 million for the town of Ross, which is an increase of $400,000 from the last report. And why? And this is in addition to the town making required payments and not optional payments. It still increased $400,000 in 1 year. And that is due to CalPERS performance. They had a performance of 5.8%, and that was less than the 6.8 performance, which they expected and planned for. So as I said, there can be extreme fluctuations in the CalPERS annual valuation rates. So for example, and this is in the staff report, but this is just an example. So in fiscal year 21, the town's unfunded liability, as determined by CalPERS, was $1.7 million. A year later, it had almost tripled to $5.68 million due to CalPERS' negative 6.1% performance in fiscal year 22. So it can wildly fluctuate from year to year. Each year, the town has a mandatory payment to its unfunded liability to CalPERS. In fiscal year 26, that payment is going to be just under $500,000, but that's a 23% increase over what we're paying this year. The town also pays a normal cost for its pension plans, which is a percentage of payroll. Employees also pay a percentage share of payroll towards their CalPERS retirement plans. Okay. So how has the town council addressed pension liability? Since 2016, the council has made $3.4 million in discretionary payments. These are our optional payments. This is in addition to what we're required to pay every year to pay down the unfunded liability. And then according to an actuary at PERS, the town's optional paydowns from 2016 to 2021 saved the town $2.3 million in interest because CalPERS charges us interest on this unfunded liability. So we're going to be asking the actuary to help us figure out what that savings is since 2021. So each year since fiscal year 22, the town has continued that pay down of $200,000. So you've paid down another $1 million. In addition, an a handful of years ago, the council reduced the amortization schedules to pay down the unfunded liability from 30 years to 20 years, resulting in higher costs in the short run, but much lower costs due to significantly less interest paid in the long run. And then in addition, through negotiations with the police officers union a few years ago, the town stopped paying the police employee share of CalPERS. And then in 2018, the police officers agreed to pay 3% of the employer share of the normal cost that we pay to PERS every year. So, the council has definitely, over these years, aggressively attacked that unfunded liability. Yet, we still have it, so we still need to keep an eye on it, and we still need to be aggressively paying it down.
Sorry, I have a question on the unfunded liability. So I made this comment I think in a previous council meeting that maybe the finance committee could take this up as a topic of trying to address. One of the concerns I have, it's great that the town pays down the balance. I think it's really, really great stewardship. But at the same time, I'm wondering from you, Krista, it must be hard on the budget if, look, this year looks like it might be a bad year in the stock market, which then will play into what the unfunded liability will grow. And then the town will be required to put more money in next year than we're anticipating. It might not hit till the next fiscal year, but it's based on the stock market, because 2022 was a horrible year in the stock market. So what I'm wondering, and I hope we can just take this up, or you could do some research for the finance committee, is does it make more sense for us to sort of, instead of paying it down for that, paying CalPERS, keep it in the town as a reserve or separate fund, that in a year where the stock performance is down, it won't impact the budget, because we could pull down that reserve instead of the town all of a sudden saying, oh, like you just said, it's a 23 or 30% increase that we have to pay in that current year. That might throw off some of the other priorities because all of a sudden you weren't planning for that. So it's just something to think about, and I don't think we need to discuss it here, but just the best way to make sure that the town can each year have a budget that you can stand by, like we know we're going to pay $500,000, and if it goes over that, we have a reserve where we can pull in instead of you having to reprioritize.
It's a 2-year lag, though, for
Yeah,
the
it's
return,
2-year.
right? So we do have some time to accommodate the wild swings of the market, unfortunately. Yeah.
So thanks for the reminder, Councilmember Salter. I do have on my list to get the finance committee to talk about it. So we'll figure out the best way to do that and look and see if there's any other options that we might have. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions so far? Good, okay. So just a reminder, the general fund has 3 components. We have an operating fund, we have the facilities equipment fund, we have the emergency fund. And then, of course, we have as of last year, we have the capital projects fund, which is the town's savings account for its civic center project primarily. And then we have some special revenue funds that can only be spent for specific purposes. So in your budget binder, you do have a separate tab for each one of those funds. So revenues in the coming year continue to grow, but they're growing at a slower rate. So this slide here is a year-over-year budget comparison. It shows that some revenue continues to grow, but more slowly. So the property tax revenue is projected by the county tax assessor for the coming year. And then we have a modest consulting agreement with a company called HDL. They do a couple of things for us, but one of it is they do look at the property tax projections that the county of Marin puts together, just as a confirmation of that, because it's such a huge part of our budget. We need to feel secure in that. So, and then we do budget really conservatively for planning and building revenue. We base it on a 5-year average and including our estimated actual for the end of this fiscal year. And as you can see, we've got planning revenue we're projecting to get 13% increase in planning revenue, but building revenue is taking a hit, 14.7%. Couple other highlights. The operating fund revenue is a 5.7% increase over the previous year. And then just the importance of the parcel tax covers, the public safety parcel tax covers 18% of our police and fire expenditures. The rate for the fiscal year ending '26 is budgeted at $1,201.50 per parcel, which is a continuation of what it is now. Yeah. This slide is an overview of expenditures by department. I'd like to comment that, so if you see the department that we're seeing a decrease in is the fire department of 6.4% for the overall fire department budget, and I'll explain about that in a few slides. We also just are showing a decrease in capital expenditures, and it would be good for me to say here, these are our small capital expenditures in this budget. And this is where we put, for example, this year, that budget includes some funding set aside for a website improvement. These are small, one-time, they're computer purchases, things of that nature. So it fluctuates based on need. Okay, so this is showing the operating fund balance. So this is our reserve that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So it is expecting to drop in fiscal year ending '26 because we had enough money in there, far exceeding our reserve policy, which is 30%. And so I am proposing in this budget that we transfer $1 million from that operating fund reserve over to the capital fund. And that is what is that's what is getting the capital fund to that 11.75 million by the end of next year. But even after doing that 1 million transfer, the operating fund, that still leaves $5 million in the operating fund, and that exceeds the 30% reserve policy. I think it's about 44% is what that equates to. And then, of course, in addition, you do have your $1.5 million emergency reserve fund, which is completely separate. I won't spend too much time on these. These are also in your staff report, but this is just showing that property taxes are by far the town's largest source of revenue. And then, of course, our second largest source of revenue is generated by the public safety parcel tax. This chart shows expenditures by type, and it's showing that our largest type of expenditure are wages. And our second type is our contract with Ross Valley Fire Department for fire services. That's at 24%. This shows that 56% of the town's expenditures is for police and fire services. This is not unique. This is common for cities that are charged with providing both of those services. And we do provide fire services. We just do it through a contract with the Ross Valley Fire Department. So what is the bottom line? So here is our change in fund balance. And so the takeaway from this chart is that the operating fund is balanced. And all of our fund balances are healthy. If you notice here on the left, we've got operating fund, facilities and equipment fund, our emergency fund of that 1.5 million, capital projects fund. And then we have our special revenue funds, gas tax, roadway, drainage, general plan update fund. Those we project to be ending 2026 with balances. Okay? And now the last part of my presentation talks about some overall priorities for our budget for the coming year, and then I've got a slide for each department to give you some highlights. Any questions before I undertake this? Okay. And yeah, feel free to stop me, and we do have staff here to answer questions that I might not be able to.
Sorry, Chris, sorry, just so we know the flow for the meeting, are we going to, we're going over the priorities, but before we get to the capital projects, will we have time to comment on any of the items?
Absolutely, it's your meeting.
Okay, no, I just didn't want to interrupt
Yeah.
the flow of what we're
Yeah,
doing.
thanks. I'll just hit on these if that's all right, and then you all can talk, and then we can talk about the capital. Again, our capital, Rich's capital presentation, CIP presentation, it will be pretty short, too. Okay. So these next couple of slides show that we've got another busy year ahead with a variety of new and priority projects. And remember, these are inspired by your goals. Absolutely maintain our financial stability and our public safety. We need to focus on employee retention, recruitment, employee safety, training, and technology investments. And this is, I've asked our department managers and directors to make sure that we've got some funding in each budget for professional development for our staff. We need to focus on safety. It's useful, we belong to a risk, workers' comp JPA that gives us a lot of good training for safety and helps us emphasize. So we have equipment in here that's about employee safety. So an example of this is we are installing a air conditioning system for the Ross Recreation offices and the Ross Rec classroom. They don't have air conditioning now. There's a new state law which requires the town requires all employers in California to make sure we do our best to prevent heat illness. And that's one way to do it. And we also want our employees and the people that are participating in those programs to be comfortable and to be productive. So that's an investment by the town. A priority for the coming year is implementation of the town facilities master plan. We need to get that RVPA lease finalized. We need to engage an architect. We need to work on temporary locations for our police department, for the paramedics, for our public works folks. We need to begin the environmental review, and we need to work on our facilitating the building of 9 housing units because we have deadlines to meet under the action plan for the housing element that was certified by California. Increase in community engagement and education. We want to continue our investment in vehicles and equipment. So for example, we have in the budget a new tractor for the Public Works Department that has a handful of different attachments that will allow them to do their work more efficiently. We need to continue our cybersecurity improvements. I'll be bringing forward a contract for Marin IT at your May or June council meetings, which will, in addition to ongoing IT services, will be doing additional cybersecurity measures. We need to continue to support Age-Friendly Task Force and our intergenerational programming. We need to begin our general plan update process. We need to continue improving emergency preparedness, implementing the 6-cycle housing element. At your budget workshop a year ago, our planning director, Roberta Fusilano, had quite a few slides about our recently certified housing element. I'm not asking her to do that this year, but there is a lot of work to be done. One of the, I think it was your April council meeting, we had to do our annual progress report, housing progress report. That had a lot of good information too about what's being done. We need to continue to focus on pedestrian safety, and that is education, enforcement, and engineering. So you have, general government is one of our departments, and that is the city managers, our town manager's office, the town clerk's office. Also has a lot of our kind of overall HR. It also has our town council expenses in there. So included in this budget is a 3% cost of living increase for most employees, not for police officers, because we are in the middle of negotiating with them, and that will be brought forward to the council at a separate time in the coming months. It includes a 10% increase in health insurance costs. It does include a full-time senior accountant position. It's not filled yet. The council approved this earlier this year. And in exchange for that, the new full-time position, we are decreasing the temporary part-time wages that we had in the general government department, and we are decreasing our contract for consulting accounting work. It's not completely zeroing it out, but it does chip away at that. Increased costs for IT and cybersecurity continue. One of the reasons that you'll see the increase year over year with this department is our auditor is requiring us to actually put tax collection costs that we have to pay to the county of Marin to collect property taxes, and then they remit them to us. The auditor is requiring us that we actually show it in our budget. We were just taking it off of our the amount of revenue we get. So that does account for this percentage increase. We're still awaiting some of these costs that are pretty important. We're still awaiting our fire department final budget. We're still waiting for our insurance costs from risk management. We have 2 risk management JPAs, and we are expecting those costs to increase. So focus areas, I just pulled out a few for this department, is we've got $30,000 for a website design. We are including some money for some communications assistant, just a modest amount. We are looking at, we need a new phone system and of course our IT improvements, but our phone system, AT&T is getting rid of, what are they called? They're the old analog, thank you. So we're required to update our system anyways, and we're looking at some voice over internet, trying to reduce our costs that we pay to AT&T right now. So, and Cindy has been working on that. We need to continue records retention and scanning. The planning department has made a lot of progress on that this year of scanning files. I have some funding in there for HR ongoing services. So this would be right now I'm able to consult. We do have our town attorney's office has a personnel attorney, and when questions arise, we are able to contact him and that employee law group within Burke Williams and Sorensen, the town attorney firm. However, this is someone that, first of all, I think would be less expensive, but also has a lot of experience in public safety, and so I'm working on that this year. And then we have some money in here because we are going to be needing to, in this coming year, recruit 2 key leadership positions. Under the fire department, it is our largest expense. The fire department budget is 30% of our budget. Labor negotiations are underway. That is going to affect our contract, what we pay for. And so this is where I promised to tell you, it's actually very good news. The closure of Fire Station 18 on June 30th generates savings to the JPA, to the Ross Valley Fire Department. And per the terms of the 3rd Amendment to the JPA that was adopted by all the member agencies in the beginning of 2022, much of that savings will be applied to the town of Ross, to our, let's just call them dues, how much we pay to the Ross Valley Fire Department. This savings in the 3rd JPA amendment, it indicated that the approximate amount of the savings would be $300,000 a year to the town of Ross, but it also said that we weren't going to be realizing that full savings for 8 years. Well, we're going to be realizing $323,000 this coming July 1. So, and this is because that savings is being generated by 6 different fire department positions that are being downgraded because of this closure of the station. Some of the positions, they don't need as many supervisors, right? Because they're only going to have 3 stations, not 4. And so that generates a savings, and those positions have actually transitioned a lot earlier, much earlier than they had originally anticipated they would. So we will be, the fire chief has let me know that he believes it's going to be a $323,000 credit to the town of Ross in the coming fiscal year. Now, of course, that does need to be approved by the Ross Valley Fire Department Board. And then we'll receive an additional savings about a year from now when that final 6th position transitions. So this is great news. I mean, we thought we weren't going to get it for 8 years, and now we're getting the vast majority of it in essentially 0 years. So that is why you're seeing that negative increase in the fire department budget. So even though the Ross Valley Fire Department is not finalized, and if Ross's costs are expected as a member to increase 3.15% before that savings credit is applied. And so due to the anticipated credit, our fire department budget expenses are budgeted at $3 million, which is a 6.4% decrease from the year before. So great news. The fire department budget also includes $61,000 each for wildfire defensible space work and wildfire local prevention funds. Those are monies that are provided by the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority to each jurisdiction. This is Ross's share based on their formula. And that's what we've got for the fire department.
Can we pause here to talk about fire? Again, I don't want to ruin the flow, but I think this is a really important part of our budget.
It's up to you.
I don't know what you want to talk about, but go ahead.
Well, so this is good news that the savings are going to be realized. But I think what came out in all of our discussions about closing this department was our cost allocation within the department's very high. So I'm wondering, is there a plan to reopen this discussion with Ross Valley Fire Department on how much Ross should be paying? How do we go about that discussion? Because obviously, these savings are going to be coming in and it's a credit, seems sort of strange. Why not just reopen the whole cost allocation discussion?
So the JPA agreement also says that once that the full attrition of those positions is established or has been realized, and they were, again, anticipating it was going to take 8 years. But when that 6th position goes through its transition, which they expect to be a year from now, the JPA agreement states that at that time, that savings is going to be rolled into the percentage. So the percentages are going to change. And the fire chief estimates Ross's share will decrease by approximately 3%. And therefore, that 3% share will be redistributed to the other 3 members. So that is already in the JPA agreement, and that will happen.
So, I mean, I think that's nice that we might be getting 3% reduction. I think it's very clear we're paying right now the second most in this JPA. So I think it's a question for the council is what is a fair allocation if we have no fire station and we have no staff here, we have nothing in the town of Ross? Should we be paying still 30, 25, 27% of the budget with such limited amount of resources at our disposal? And so I'm wondering what the process is to reopen this discussion at the fire board.
I just want to correct you that the resources are not changing. We're still going to get the same amount of service, and we're not closing a department. We're just closing this facility. So I just want to be clear that the services are going to remain the same. And the negotiation was based on what the council agreed to in 2012 when we agreed to join Ross Valley Fire, which was based on, council members negotiating the formula and arriving to the party very late. Bill's done a lot of work on trying to understand the history of why the allocations were as they were. So procedurally, I'm not sure what the timing would be to raise that issue at the fire board.
So as we, I think the timing would be to bring this up. It needs to come from the fire board. And so, you could do it by, at a noticed council meeting. The council could discuss this idea. So 2 of you would need to put it on the agenda. And then you would be providing direction to your representatives that are on the fire board to raise that issue, if that's what you want to do. So
Based on all the research that we did, and I know you're aware of this, Matt, that to change the funding allocation requires a unanimous vote by every single member of the JPA.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that given there's these savings, so this, in the JPA agreement, it actually states like every couple years, these cost allocations should be reviewed. And the fire board has not done that in 13 years. So it seems very appropriate that this, given that a station is closing, that the cost allocation should be put before the fire board to discuss. I would say, I hear you that the resources have not changed. I don't agree with that. I think the fact that the station's closing, we are seeing a lower level of service levels, and that's borne out in the longer response times because there's not a station here. So I think it's very appropriate for us to bring this up to the fire board that, hey, maybe the allocations should shift based on the savings. That's great. But just the overall now participation of the town of Ross in this fire board, we are taking an impact. And I think we all probably, I know there's a long history of this, think we are paying a lot to the fire JPA, given the size of this town and the actual requirements and needs of the services.
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't go too much further because we're getting off topic, right?
yeah, I mean, I think that's not part of the budget, but you can bring that forward. You have established processes to bring that forward.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is it's the largest budget item. So you have to budget for this and figure out how much we're going to spend next year, the years following. So I'm happy to try to discuss this with some of you and maybe bring it up as a separate item. I just think it's very important to our budget for given how much we're spending on fire.
I just want to mention that the flip side is we're not having to spend any money to rebuild our fire station. We're only having to spend 27% of the cost to maintain the station in San Anselmo. So this is really a huge windfall for the town. But let's move on because we're getting into Ben would be reprimanding us. I know he would be.
Well, one of the, if you look on the fire department budget page, one of the expenses, it's a new expense for the town, but we are paying, it's so little, we're paying 27% of $15,000. That's what we're paying to upkeep of Station 19, effective July, for the coming fiscal year, because they've already put a lot of work into that station, and they don't anticipate hardly any improvements that'll have to be made for the next handful of years. And the JPA agreement does lay out a procedure by which we have to kind of meet and confer with them. So, a couple of years ago, when we were first doing this JPA, Rich and I went over to Station 19, walked around with the the fire chief and the San Anselmo Public Works Director to take a look at the building and make sure that that agreement was going to be a good deal for the town, and it is, because the station is in good shape. Okay, so Mayor, can I move on?
So sorry, Krista, one last question. Didn't they have to add some rooms for the new firemen? Was that just already done? And we-
That was, well, the Sleepy Hollow Station is doing a big remodel
Not that
to
one,
do that.
station, yeah, station.
I think they might have done something, but they already did it. It already had, I mean, that's the largest station. Yeah, but they're not charging us for it. Yeah. Okay, so the police department. So just the highlights from this is we have 9 positions funded. And I just wanted to remind the council and thank the council that the council a year ago added for the current fiscal year a new officer. We used to have 8 funded positions in the department. So we now have 9, and the purpose of adding that was for succession planning purposes, and because we've had, it's been difficult to recruit, and we have one officer that's out on long-term leave. So I'm recommending that we continue to keep that position through the coming fiscal year, but we are going to be evaluating the need for that position annually. So just a reminder there. We have a new MOU with police officers is currently being negotiated. So the focus areas for the department, this is in addition to the day-to-day law enforcement doing what they do to keep us safe, but they have some, Chief Pata has some special initiatives. We want to increase enforcement of speed limits, continue that road clearance, and continue working on e-bikes. We're going to be bringing forward a countywide e-bike regulation to the council later this summer, and then assuming the council adopts that will be turned over to Chief Pata to educate and enforce. So focus area also includes officer retention and succession planning. Add to the red flag initiative messaging on patrol cars, adjusting the police staffing on red flag days and on days of flood warning days. Continue that valuable safety partnerships with Ross School and Branson. Deploy these our new mobile speed sign and the license plate readers that we're going to be bringing forward to the council at your next meeting in key locations throughout town. So it's certainly not everything that they're doing, but it's just a couple of key focus areas in the coming year, in addition to just keeping us safe.
I just have a comment on that. I just recently learned that only 54% of Ross residents have signed up for Alert Marin. And so I think there's a big opportunity to increase the number of people who are signed up. And maybe that can be a push over the summer and in the fall. And 54% is the highest of any jurisdiction in the county, which is remarkable. So, yeah, so it's good, but it's pretty bad.
So it could be a push at the table at the post office.
We've talked about having a fall meeting for fire and emergency preparedness, and I was thinking that could be one of the themes, evacuation and Alert Marin signups to help with all of that.
But there's some more things we can do. I mean, we put a big sign here on our bulletin board. We did it at the post office, just trying to catch people's eye to sign up for Alert Marin. But there's some other things, like we could hand it out with our encroachment permit applications, right, Rich? Sure. And other things. The police department, the police chief could hand it out with citations. Okay, but there are, we need to be, picking the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. Okay.
Sorry, just one other, on the communications front. I think one thing we could do as well is work with the school. They do their e-pocket, and every parent gets that e-pocket almost daily. and there's lots of community announcements there. And so it could just be a really nice place
Yeah.
to plug things like this in.
You know, I did send that to Kelly Dwinell, who's on the school board, and encouraged her to include that. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's a good reminder about the e-pocket. Thanks.
Just, we could
yes.
also make sure that there's a table at all our Live on the Commons events as a way to recruit people to sign up.
Okay. Then moving on to the Public Works Department budget highlights. So building, land, street, and tree maintenance costs of $385,000 are 16% more than our prior year budget, with a 35% increase in tree pruning. So I thought that was a good highlight to share with council. But focus areas are for the department, we want to continue to maintain and repair existing pedestrian paths on Shady Lane and Sir Francis Drake for accessibility compliance. Maintain and repair our existing storm drains and repair of minor drainage trouble spots. We want to spend time expanding staff knowledge base of Trackit permitting software that we use here in the town. Train staff on encroachment permit writing, traffic control, road repair inspections, and utility pavement markings. Job site safety training for our public works maintenance crew. Winship bridge replacement, we need to complete our National Environmental Protection Act work. It's called NEPA, and right-of-way certification in progress with final design construction completed in 2027. They're going to continue to identify small project opportunities, thinking about, signage, striping, restoration that improve pedestrian and traffic safety. Continued implementation of our tree management plan. You might recall that we brought forward an inventory and a management plan to the council. I think it was last year or the year before. So we're continuing to put funding towards that. And then, as Rich will be going forward, the capital improvement program includes several pedestrian improvements, such as Allen Avenue, Shady Lane pathways, Laurel Grove pathway, and Sir Francis Drake improvements, and that's in the CIP. But it's work that our Public Works Director does, so that's why I've got it as a budget highlight. Our Recreation Department, some of their budget highlights, their focus
Just ask a
areas. Of
Question
course.
on the Public Works. So we're going to be getting a payment, I guess, in the fall, based on the assessment of Mr. Pickett. And so will that go into the Public Works budget, or will that go into the general operating fund? Where does that go?
No, I'm sorry, it doesn't, our revenues just don't go right into the budget. And I'm not sure when exactly we're going to get that, but we can always bring that to the council if you'd like us to.
I was just curious about where it's going to appear.
Yeah.
I think he has to pay it on his property tax bill in the fall.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it gets rolled into our property tax revenue or if we have a way of taking it out as revenue, but revenues that are collected don't always hit the same department that expends it. Sometimes they might think that's unfair, but that's just kind of how it works. Do you have anything to add, Rich? No, okay, yeah. We'll let you know when we get that.
Sorry, are you moving on from Public Works? Because I had one comment on Public Works.
Please.
So I was noticing in the staffing, most of the other departments have, a coordinator for the rec department, or we have a planner that helps with planning and building, but in Public Works, we do not. And I saw there's a 0 for Public Works superintendent. So I'm wondering just the reason why we don't have somebody helping that department in more of a support capacity, and whether that seems like an area we might want to add a person.
So I can address that, Councilmember Salter. I do fall on the resource of Mo Engineering, who is a former town engineer or contract town engineer, public works director. So they've been very helpful in picking up those smaller projects and tasks that I allocate to them based on my own availability to work on it. So could be something to consider in the future. Right now, we're on we can provide that level of service, I believe, satisfactorily, relying on Mo Engineering to provide those ancillary support for Public Works.
So I would just add, we know that our Public Works Director has hinted at retirement at some point. So I just want to make sure we have the appropriate resources to backfill and help and learn from the wise director that we have currently. We're thinking about succession planning in the future. So I think we've all been supportive of adding staff. And I just want to make sure, this seems like the one department, there's some big projects coming up, as we know, the Winship Bridge, the master facilities. So making sure we're planning for the future and having the right staffing. I'm glad you have a consultant there, but I think it might be worth the investment of bringing someone in who can help the town full-time in that capacity.
So if I might add, anyways, thank you. I love getting that council support for staffing. You know, a couple thoughts here is that, you know, we're a small town. And so our employees do a lot of different things. And so, for example, Rich does some things that we're trying to, you see in a previous slide, we've got train staff on encroachment permit writing, traffic control, road repair inspections, and utility pavement markings. I mean, there are things that Rich does here that we want to make sure we start now getting other staff trained up to do. So for example, last week, Rich spent time training our recreation manager on how to use Trackit so that she can take over the special event permits so that he no longer has to do it. So we are very much aware. I mean, Rich has given us a lot of advance warning about his retirement date. And so we'll be working together to make sure that we succession plan appropriately. But getting back to the wearing different hats, you know, I've worked in several other cities. And so, for example, and Rich does a fantastic amount of work for us. But I do. So, for example, I do waste management, which typically in many public works departments, that is a function that they do. Well, here in the town of Ross, because we wear different hats, that's something that here the town manager has been doing at least for a while. I think my predecessor did it for a while. So, and then because Rich's office is in our planning and building department, our planning and building tech does provide some administrative support to him. Our town clerk actually provides administrative support, and we have a part-time office assistant. So for example, our office assistant does a lot of the noticing, whereas in some other cities, that function might lie in the individual department. So we do a lot of working together as a team. Rich is going to have, I mean, they're going to be big shoes to fill. And as I explained in the financial forecasts, we need to be doing everything we can before we add permanent positions because of their benefit costs. So for example, for the capital fund, as we start going forward in the process, the council already approved the hiring of a part-time project manager. But we'll also, if we determine that we need other resources, whether it's somebody with more of the entitlement aspect of it, a planner, or public works work, engineering oversight, construction oversight, we'll be able to hire either part-time employees or consultants and pay for it out of the capital fund instead of adding on a full-time position. So, but I appreciate your support, and please know, and I hope you're comfortable with the fact that it is foremost in my mind that we have a public works director that's retiring.
Yeah, one other thing to add,
How'd you?
we don't have anywhere to put anyone else. I mean, we have, our accountant would be back in that room, and then we really don't have anywhere to put it, any more additional employees.
Well, I appreciate that there obviously is a plan to redo our facilities, but I want you to also think about as well the recruitment for the replacement. It's not an understatement to say they're huge shoes to fill. I mean, his expertise is unmatched. I don't think it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be very hard to find someone with this sort of tenure and just all the areas that he has technicalities in. And it might be helpful, I just want everyone to think about this, it might be helpful in recruiting to say, oh, well, there actually is a superintendent who sort of has been here for a year or two and whatever it may be, and worked very closely with him. And sometimes when people are looking to take a job, knowing that they have a really strong staff, and I really appreciate that the staff all wears, you know, multiple hats, but it helps in recruiting to know that there's a solid team that they're joining. So I think it's to me, one of the biggest risks we have looking forward. And there's so many big projects on I know we haven't gone through them yet, but there are. So just really trying to make sure that we feel like we have that level of expertise in the department that will continue, and it may make the recruiting for the replacement easier.
Before we start on the recreation discussion, could we take a 5-minute break? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, great. Thank you.
For our recreation department in this coming year is collaborate with Magic to include a preschool after school, further investment into our kids club after school program to ensure that we're retaining the older students, grades 2 to 4. Increase adult and senior programs to include language classes and fitness classes. They are also looking at an installation of the new phone system to replace all our outdated ones. Investment into, the budget reflects investment into recreation events, including the Turkey Trot 2026 and the reimagined Ross Town Dinner. Heightened collaborations with local agencies such as RPOA, the auxiliary, and PTO. Increased marketing tactics for events and programs. So just a few highlights, a little focus areas this year. In planning building, the budget includes a $225,000 for housing and general plan consultants. And then $175,000 will be transferred from the general plan update fund into the planning and building department to help cover the costs. Focus areas in that department are complete a fee study that has been underway. And then, of course, the housing element action plan implementation includes some technical zoning amendments, parking, conditional use permit, objective standards, housing laws, Senate Bill 9, et cetera. And those are things that will be coming forward to the council. Objective standards to streamline the design review process. And so, of course, those would also be coming to council. Update of the climate action plan. Our director, Roberta Feliciano, has secured a free consultant that is funded by MCEA, right, Roberta? MCEP. Oh, excuse me, MCEP, thank you, who will be working with the town of Ross to update our climate action plan, which is getting up there in years. A big effort will also be the initiation of a general plan update, and in the coming months, Roberta is going to be bringing an agenda item to council to talk about the status of the general plan, what some options the council may have in moving forward with an update. And then further streamlining of the design review processes. So that is what I've got for the fiscal year ending 26 budget. Rich has a few more slides about the capital improvement program, but if you had any more questions or comments at this time, or we can save them till after Rich's, whatever you prefer.
Questions? Terry?
Actually, maybe it is a question. In the general government budget, there's some money, some minimum amount set aside for communications help. I'm wondering if there's it might be some funding available, and maybe we have to bring it up as an issue at the next council meeting, for funds to develop, for our council to actually look at effectiveness, not content, but really the process of how we work together. And having a consultant work with us to support a more effective council. So it's just a recommendation. Maybe it would come up at another meeting where I would throw it out and ask it be part of an agenda item.
I think you could do it both ways. I mean, now's the time to bring up items, and if there's council consensus, because this is your draft budget, so I'll be bringing this forward to the council for final adoption, in June. So between now and then, I could bring back to council some ideas. I can, come up with a consultant that might be able to help. I know that, I can't remember, Councilmember Dowling, what other council member joined you, but you did make a request a couple of meetings ago for some Brown Act training that we are going to be, we are working with our town attorney to set up that. So we could do, kind of a similar thing where we bring somebody in before a council meeting or separate. So I can work with the mayor and the mayor pro tem on scheduling something, but I would just need to hear that there's some consensus for me to
Do that.
for me to bring back kind of a budget and a kind of a scope of work for somebody.
Okay.
The scope of
So
work would.
I talked with Councilmember Dowling about potentially like a council retreat or something where we serve on different committees and boards, and it's very common to have a board retreat, something where the council, it's not about any subject matter, but just team building and learning better, effective ways of communicating. And so it could be part of, I support this completely. I think it wasn't Brown Act, it was something about ethics.
Right.
So it could be just a day, a retreat, some funding for that, where we have, we pay for a consultant to help us with team building exercises and better effective communication.
I would support it too, but not a whole day, maybe an hour or two.
And I would support the general concept, but I have to say that when I've seen these sorts of consultants come in for other boards like the school board, they were totally ineffective and it was a waste of money, and that the group knew better than the consultant what it needed. And I think we have to be really careful that we focus on what we think we need and not have some consultant spend, an hour talking about principles of working together, something that just doesn't enhance our collaboration.
So if I could propose, I could talk with it. I think this would be appropriate for the mayor and the mayor pro tem to explore with me, because I'm hearing consensus for doing something, and we can absolutely figure out what that scope of work would be and come up with an amount of money and put that in the budget when it comes forward to you in June. Is that okay?
And one more item to the same topic. Councilmember Robbins talked about, and I'm sure McMillan was both on the school board, is that after their meetings, they used to debrief, and just say, how did we think the meeting went? Do we think we could improve our communication style? And obviously, passions can get high on certain topics. So I don't know if we want to add that to the end of our agenda. Sometimes it's very late, so I don't want to push that on anyone. But I'm very open to us trying to have just a little discussion amongst each other about how we can improve and have better communication right in that moment. Like, hey, I didn't appreciate that, or maybe you could tone that down, because we just can't meet outside of the council chambers, which makes it really hard. So anyway, I liked that suggestion from her. I don't know if others agree.
I think it sounds like a good idea. It could be very simple, like what worked in this meeting, what didn't work in this meeting. It could be that simple.
And maybe each person gets only 1 minute since it's the end of the meeting, so you can make your comment and then you're done.
And you,
Oh,
Is it not? No, it's not on. Okay. And somebody can counsel me on pressing that button. Okay.
yes. So a standing agenda item, was that the consensus at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
And it used to be meeting evaluation, like very brief. I mean, that's what it was at the school board. It could be anything we want it to be.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to happen, I mean, it can be on the agenda, but it doesn't have to be addressed every time if the mayor, when the mayor runs a perfect meeting, there doesn't need to be any comments.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know if we have nothing to say, we have nothing to say. Some of the meetings, there's probably nothing to say. But I think it would help our feelings sometimes if things go awry for everyone to just say like, hey, I didn't like that, or that I felt attacked, whatever it may be, and we all sort of try to leave the chambers feeling a little better.
Yes.
Yes,
I'll
great,
put that on the draft agenda that I meet with you and the Mayor Pro Tem about.
perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on this portion of the discussion? No? Okay. Krista, I guess it's Rich's turn?
Yes. So we're going to switch places real quick.
So we're moving to item number 10, which is the town council discussion and input on the draft five-year capital improvement plan document.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
So I'm so sorry. I had one more item. I was just looking through my notes before we moved to capital projects. It was really for the rec department. The question I had for you was just on the tennis keys. And this could go in the smaller CapEx, not Rich's department. At my business, they've improved locks so that you can use your mobile device to open locks. It's called Latch. There's a couple of vendors out there. I thought it might be a nice idea to look at for the tennis keys, because I saw it actually is kind of expensive to rekey every year and then redistribute and then charge the residents for the keys. I don't know if you've looked at that, but I thought that might be an improvement we can make.
Hello. Councilmember Salter, I think that's a novel idea. I haven't looked much into it, so I think that's something that staff can look into.
Great. And just so everybody knows, it's very secure. You just, it's battery operated, and so it goes on the lock, and then whoever, you would control who has access. And so it actually could help if somebody moved away from town and the town was aware, they could, revoke the access. So it's very easy to manage. And I think it would save the town money, obviously, but then also be a lot easier to manage. And then you wouldn't have residents having to keep coming in every year to get their keys.
I believe there's a few other jurisdictions and cities that do use this technology, so I can reach out to them and find out more.
All right, thank you, Mayor McMillan and Town Council members. Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. Got a 5-year CIP presentation for you this morning. Just give me a minute to bring it up here. Yeah, why isn't that? I guess I'm on the wrong, I need to be presentation, don't I?
It takes a little bit of time for it to. There you go. For it to come up.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta.
Okay. All right, so the 5-year capital improvement program, we discussed again back in February. We went over the process and the staff commitment through developing year to year our capital expenditures for roadway, drainage, and facilities expenditures. The 5-year CIP allows us to, track the 3 primary funds that fund capital improvements in the town. We have the drainage fund, we have the roadway fund, and we have now we have a capital projects fund. So that's 4. Then we have the facilities fund as well. So this gives us a chance to track those funds, allocate projects that will complement the revenue that comes in for those various funds in over a 5-year projection. So a little bit about the CIP implementation constraints again. We went over this in February. Staff commitments subject to available funding from our various capital funds, and the timing of other capital projects, future public utility projects, consideration of grant funding call for projects, and environmental restrictions. Those all kind of govern how I develop the capital improvement program and the 5-year capital improvement program for presentation to council for your consideration. Let's get this out of the way here. So looking forward to the capital projects, these not necessarily including the roadway projects, that'll be the next slide. But for this current fiscal year ending, the major project was the Laurel Grove Safe Routes to School Phase 2 project. That was both a paving project and an accessibility project, and that we still have one more phase to go to bring that project to fruition over the next several years, and we can look at that as we get into the next few slides. Next year, or this fiscal year end, we want to complete the Natalie Coffin Green Park bridges. Hopefully that's going to be completed before the end of this year, but that's the next fiscal year. Civic Center CEQA, we want to start the environmental process for the Civic Center. That requires that we have a project description, which we don't quite have yet, but we do want to start that process. That could be up to a 1.5 year process of getting a full environmental impact report prepared and certified. And we have the Bolinas Drain Phase 2, which is another major drainage capital project, very necessary to maintain the drainage there at the north end of town. Moving on to fiscal year 2027, we have the Civic Center undergrounding project. Some good news on that. I had a very productive meeting with PG&E last week, PG&E being the primary entity for Rule 20A project that we're proposing. And it looks like they are on board with funding the Rule 20A with our credits, with our Rule 20A credits. Now, those are only about $300,000 in credits for a $2 million project. So it's something, if you hear from your constituents or others that Rule 20A is dead, it's not. It's just that the town of Ross took the necessary steps to, council passed a resolution, I think back in 2021, to form this district in a timely manner before the CPUC restrictions went into effect. And PG&E recognizes that. They recognize that this is a good and manageable project. So they actually moved the obligation of the Rule 28 credits from 2030 up to 2026. So we are moving forward with that project, and PG&E is on board. So we're kind of laying out the groundwork for working with PG&E, AT&T, Comcast, all of the players in the joint trench that's going to be required for the undergrounding project. So good news on that. Winship Bridge, we are making significant progress finally on wrapping up the NEPA process, and then we can move into the the right-of-way process and then final engineering. And like we talked about in the budget discussions, we see construction of that happening in 2027. And then as we move to 2028, we're going to be hopefully fully into wrapping up all of the entitlements, the design, the architectural design, and have CEQA out of the way so we can concentrate on going out to bid and start getting that thing construction. Fiscal year 2029, we'll probably see a continuation of that process. This is going to be a multi-year project, and probably looking into 2030 to getting that completed, kind of the rate we are going. So everything we can do to keep moving that forward will be beneficial to both the Public Works capital program and to the community as a whole. Moving on to paving projects for the upcoming 5 years. Currently, fiscal year 25, we completed the Laurel Grove Safe Routes to School Phase 2. And we are looking at, in 2026 coming up, Sir Francis Drake repaving, restriping between just southeast of Bolinas Avenue to just southeast of El Camino Bueno. And it's important that I bring up that we are going to be working on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard because that is the project that I'm reporting to the state of California under SB1, that the SB1 funding will be allocated to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. So in the minute order of this meeting, council is acknowledged that I've reported that that will be the project that we're going to be working on this year. It's also important for the TAM Measure AA obligations that we, council understands that that's the project we're moving forward with for that grant funding allocation coming up this year. We also want to get started on the Allen Avenue and Shady Lane pedestrian pathway projects. And of course, Shady Lane has the additional striping of the bicycle sharrows on that. Already working towards getting that project going for this summer. Morrison Road is in the next roadway we want to get repaired. That's in pretty bad shape up there off of below Upper Toyon off of Macon Grade. On to 2027, we're looking at going into phase 3 of Laurel Grove Safe Routes, and hopefully we can fit in Garden Road as well. And these are all based on pavement condition of these roadways, how I fit them into the capital projects. 2028, we're looking at Walters Road and the second part of phase 3 of Laurel Grove, and then on to 2029, we have Hill Road and Winding Way. So just a quick look at the major projects coming up in the 5-year. We want to complete the Bolinas Drain Phase 2 projects. Winship Bridge replacement is going to be, again, constructed within these 5 years. Civic Center undergrounding project, as I discussed, and the Civic Center redevelopment project. These are all major projects that we'll need to be looking at over, between now and 2029. So here's the graph of our fund balances, and this is something I track and kind of work with our accountant and town manager to let them know what we're looking at over the next 5 years. So you can see this top line. The top line there is the capital projects fund that we were talking about. And as we move into 2026, you can see that we have close to $12 million as the balance. That's at 11.7 million. And then as we move into the environmental certification, it starts dropping down. As we move into the undergrounding district, which is funded by this fund, it drops even more. And then as we get into the final design and maybe parts of the construction of the Civic Center, we see the fund being almost depleted by fiscal year end 29. Now, this assumes no additional additions to the capital projects fund. And then we have the roadway fund and the drainage fund. The drainage fund is the green line up there. It's been pretty steady at about $1 million. The Bolinas drain will kind of drop it there after fiscal year '25, and then it stays pretty steady. The revenue will match the expenditures of the drainage fund and keep that balance at around $1 million. Roadway fund is seeing the same sort of drop as we finish these safe routes projects. Mainly Laurel Grove was a major expenditure. And then we keep it somewhat steady as we move towards 2029, but we're down into that under $100,000 balance at the end of each year. So we're going to need to track the roadway fund closely as we move on. I don't like to have less than $100,000 in that fund at the end of a year. So we'll be tracking that closely.
Sorry, question there on the, so
Yeah.
we will need to issue a bond to support the master facilities.
I have a slide to cover that in here.
Okay,
That's
so
it, a little
this
bit.
does not obviously include the proceeds from any bond issue.
No, it doesn't. This is just assuming there's no other financial injections into that fund.
Okay, so it would be helpful to see them together because then we can figure out how much of a bond we have to issue so we have enough reserves left in the capital fund after the completion, so that we leave some buffer.
Right. So fundamentally, this slide shows us that we need to have that solved within the next few years. Yes. So where does that funding come from for these primary capital funding? So roadway projects come from the road impact fees. That's probably the primary source, which we don't really know year to year what that's going to be. It's all based, of course, on valuation of building permits that come in for the year. TAM Measure A is depleted. Measure AA, Measure B is depleted as well. But Measure AA is pretty steady, and it provides about $60,000 to the town of Ross each year. Very helpful. State gas tax, road maintenance and rehab account, SB1, also provide an additional $50,000 or so each year. The drainage fund is also funded by the drainage impact fees, which are identical 1% of the valuation of each building permit, same as the roadway fund. And of course, just like that, we never know what it's going to be. We just have to work it into our projections of the trend of building permits issued in the prior year. The drainage, Winship Bridge, the Federal Highway Bridge Program funding, we're still on track, as far as we know, to continue getting funds from that program through final design and then into construction. Flood Zone 9 provided some pretty helpful funding on the Winship Bridge. They paid for all of the California Environmental Quality Act funding. That went over budget, and we did go back to the county, and they did cover those additional costs as well. So that was pretty helpful. Then our facilities and capital projects funds, and I've got another slide to talk about this a little bit. So contributions, grants, operating fund transfers, bond measures, that sort of thing. So a look at the facilities funding opportunities. So currently we have the $11.8 million in the capital projects fund, which is that's our projection towards the end of by the end of 2026 fiscal year. The project cost, according in 2023, was $21 million. Cost, especially labor, has increased significantly since 2023, so we'll need to track that closely. Of course, once we come up with a definitive project, we can narrow down those costs a lot better. So there's your deficit. So it's $10 million. Where are we going to get that other money? That's something that staff and council will need to work on over the next few years. There's additional funds from the operating fund. Do we want to rely on that? That's up to the council. Grants, grant funding for police and emergency services. I believe there's some grant funding opportunities out there. We need to look into that and pursue those opportunities, partner relationships, donations, and then some form of debt financing. So those are the points to consider over the next 5 years on our capital expenditures, and that concludes my report for today, and open it up for questions and comments.
I just have a quick comment or question. What, are there specifics about what the Allen Avenue project will be?
So we've worked out a preliminary plan. We've got the base mapping done. We are running into some issues with being able to accommodate parking, a travel lane, and the pathway along Allen Avenue. So I had to meet with the fire department, and they have special width requirements along Allen because it's right next to the school. So we're working out a plan where, I mean, we do have the $100,000 grant, Safe Routes grant, which is very helpful, where we may have to do pavement widening into where the roadside ditches are and underground that stuff. It could start getting pretty expensive. So I want to work with the neighborhood group and with the Ross School to determine the best balance of available parking and fitting in the pathway on that. So I don't have a final options to bring to council for review yet. We're still working on that.
Would the school move its fence in a little bit to accommodate parking or a path?
Well, that would require an encroachment easement into the school to do that. So, that's something we can look into, but that would require real estate considerations for getting that easement. They also have there's maybe an opportunity to move that one fence that juts out that has the gas valving in. I think that's a regulation with that clear distance from that valve is. So those are things we need to look at, but moving the fence, that's something to consider, but I don't think we should rely on that for our project.
Thank you.
And Rich, that's something that will come back to the council to approve, so we'll get to take a look at it.
Yeah, that's been the intention all along, is to let council kind of decide after I meet with the school district and the neighborhood group, get their input, and then bring it to council.
Any other comments, questions? Matt?
So can you just talk a little bit about the undergrounding project here at this site? The total cost is 2.6 million, and I can appreciate that we might be getting 300,000 from PG&E, but it seems like a tremendous amount of money to spend on undergrounding. So maybe could you just explain the project, like why is it so expensive?
Yeah, very good question. So with the approved layout of the Civic Center, which includes housing now in the over by where the courtyard is now, that necessitates the redesign of the Laurel Grove intersection with Sir Francis Drake into a four-way intersection to make this work, as with having housing there and also additional parking and the general circulation of the project. It really started standing out that we need to redo that intersection. And the best way to do that is to accommodate the other frontage improvements and access off of Lagunitas and the additional access off of Sir Francis Drake was to underground these poles. So it's partly aesthetic, and it's partly the fire benefits of not having these poles and wires next to our trees here and landscaping. But it mainly is for functionality of this intersection with Laurel Grove and Sir Francis Drake. The signalization will have to change, and we'll have a primary access now at that intersection. So that was what was driving this project, those three elements: safety, circulation, and aesthetics.
Is it doable if we didn't underground, or is it's required to underground, you think?
We would at least have to underground the one pole out there near the intersection, and then you'd have, new guy wires that are coming down right in front, that, the wires that hold the poles in place, that'll be coming down right in front of our new facility. So, yes, it's doable. But I recommend taking advantage of our Rule 28 credits at this point to continue on with the project.
And I'll just offer a comment that I've heard that the undergrounding project that is being driven by the residents is about 3 times more expensive than what they had originally thought. And so the undergrounding is just skyrocketing in terms of price.
Right, so the initial meeting with the PG&E about 2 years ago on the Rule 20A project, they came out here and they gave us a preliminary estimate of 1.1 million. So here we are 2 years later, and it's 2.2, 2.5 million. So at least they're being honest of the cost escalations. They're keeping us aware that the price of copper and the price of labor is getting more and more expensive each year.
Any other comments on the CIP, Matt?
So just, yeah, I mean, just back to this, is that when we say we have about a $10 million capital fund, we're talking about almost 30% of it going to this undergrounding. So I just hope we feel like this is really the best use of the funds, because it's, especially since it keeps increasing in costs. I'm sure you've evaluated, I mean, maybe there's a middle ground where we have some of it above and that one intersection, but it's a lot of the money, and it's just very, very expensive. I know that it is an expensive project from what our residents are doing, but I just wonder how necessary it is, if there's some ways, especially if we have to go for a bond to build the other facilities, like if we can save some money somewhere else, it might be worth exploring.
Right, so, and one other, to that point, the Rule 20A requires that you have at least 600 feet of undergrounding. So if we did just underground one pole, we wouldn't qualify for any Rule 28 credits. We'd still, and then you're still looking at probably close to $750,000 just to lower one pole and to guy up the other adjacent poles. So
I just want to encourage us to take a long-term view of what we're doing, and hopefully no other council will have to do this again for 100 years. And I think we want to do it right, and we want to make it as beneficial to the residents and the public safety people and the town staff as possible. So while it may seem like we should explore cutting costs in the short term, I think in the long term, that's not a great idea. We want to be cost effective, but we don't want to be sitting here in 20 years. Well, I certainly won't be sitting here in 20 years. You may be, Matt, saying, gosh, I really wish we would have undergrounded those utilities or whatever. I think we want to just do this right and get it over with and move on.
yeah, and the Rule 20A sunsets in 2030 as well. So that's the idea.
Terry?
The capital improvement plan includes, I think, 2 million for paramedics. Is that correct? About 2. Yeah.
Yeah, the Public Facilities Master Plan, Concept B, based on 2023 construction dollars, estimated that that facility would be a little bit less than $2 million.
Okay.
Was that, I'm sorry, was that your question?
Yeah, so that's part of the CIP?
Yes, that's part of the Public Facilities Master Plan. That's one element of it. And do you have the plan? The master plan?
Right.
It has a great section just on paramedics in it, and it goes into exactly every element of that and the square footage that's to it, and it's really an interesting read.
Is there an urgency to get that going?
Absolutely.
Okay. And when is that anticipated, that we'll start doing the building,
The building of the,
paramedic?
it needs to, we have a lot to figure out.
Right.
So part of getting a part-time project manager on board, right now we're working on finalizing a lease with the RVPA, and So we have a lot to figure out. I mean, I'd like to be able to bring forward to the council some options for how to do this project. And one of the options could be phasing the project. But I really need to be able to speak with an architect and the construction, to get that expertise and find out, maybe that's an option for the council to consider, is to phase it and start off with the paramedic facility and the police station. And then, but we have a very constrained site. And so we also are required by the state of California in our housing element, we have to meet certain deadlines, milestones to facilitate this building of 9 units. And in order to build those 9 units on the site, we have to demolish the Public Works building and build it on another part of the site. So I think that the common theory is, well, it's best to do it all at the same time, right? And that'll cost us the less, and it'll have an impact right away, but then we'll just get it done, right? That would be the best thing to do, but we aren't going to be able to afford to do the entire project without going to the voters and their timelines with going to the voters. So there's a lot to be worked out. Yeah.
I was thinking that we have you're developing the lease with the paramedics, and I think there was some issue of having to define when we would have that building available.
Exactly, yeah. Yes.
Still
Question,
being
Julie.
negotiated. Got it.
Question, Rich. On the 28 funds, I know this has moved around quite a bit since I've been on the council with the eligibility shrinking over time. Can we depend on the 28 funds that you've mentioned? Or is there still some chance that the PUC and/or PG&E are going to shrink our eligibility even further? I know you mentioned a sunset period, but can we depend on that as of now, as long as we do this project before the sunset?
Well, in the current environment with the CPUC, yes, we can rely on them. What happens between now and 2030, I can't, none of us can really speculate on what's going to happen. But my conversations with PG&E last week, they are obligating these funds. They're moving them from 2030, or I think it wasn't 20. They weren't going to give them to us just before it expired, but they've obligated them now to 2026 and 2027. So that means they are internally budgeting the expenditure of this $300,000 to the Town of Ross Rule 28 project. So it looks very good that we will get those funds. A lot better than it did 2 weeks ago for me.
Good, thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, Matt.
So one item that I didn't see on the plan, but I'd heard you were working on it, maybe it wasn't big enough to put on here, was just parking downtown. Obviously, those spots were removed, and I remember in that meeting, we're finding places to add them back. So I would love to see us add parking downtown. It's very, very difficult to find parking around the school, school time pickup. And then on weekends for baseball games and soccer games, it's really, really hard. So I saw that they also created more red spots on the sort of there was like a drainage area on the main street on Roscommon. Anyway, maybe coming back, maybe it wasn't important enough to put on the budget, but I would love for us to address parking and adding spots in whatever way we can down there.
Right, so we did just enter into a contract with a striping contractor they're going to add one additional 15-minute parking stall where the EV station charging is. It turns out we only need one accessible parking stall at that one EV station. So the one closest to the post office, that's going to become a public 15-minute parking stall. So that's one additional one. And we're also doing some other accessible upgrades to those parking stalls and adding more EV icons on the stalls. But we are creating one additional one. That's going to happen next week, I think, on the 30th of this month. So We will see that one new stall. It's, the only other opportunities to add an additional stall would be to take away one of the post office employee parking only stalls, which I don't think that would be very popular with the post office. So we haven't approached that option yet, but we are adding one here within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, and then do you know where I'm talking about on the Ross Common? It looked like the red area expanded by, there's a drain on the street.
Yes. So we,
Fired?
yeah, so all we did was expand the red up to the parking tees. There was a gap where, I guess you could call it kind of nebulous, where it wasn't red, but it also wasn't within the parking tees. So all our Public Works guys did was extend the red up to the parking tees where you're allowed to park. So we didn't lose any parking there. But no, we don't want anyone parking by those drains. Those are pretty important drainage facilities that drain directly into the concrete channel, and we want to keep those clear.
Okay, well, maybe it's another item someday down, but just figuring out ways of striping or adding parking, I think is probably I don't know how you guys feel, but I hear a lot. And when those spots got taken out, people were very upset, and they said, well, I can't park. So if we could just have that as an item on our priority list of inventing more parking somehow, I think it'd be appreciated by the residents.
So I know that a consultant is going to be hired in the community and looking at the Civic Center redo and the cost, the additional costs that are going to. Right, and the additional costs that will take to actually complete the Civic Center redo. At that point in the planning, will we be able to identify a timing when we actually have to go out either for a bond measure or a parcel tax? Because that timing would be important.
Absolutely. I mean, this is why I identified this project as one of our priorities, because it's not just priority for staff. It's going to be it's a priority item for the council. You're going to be spending quite a bit of time, and you're just a discussion regarding your measure. You know, when is it going to be? How is it going to be structured? What are your options? There's a lot of work to be done. And you'll be spending a lot of time, and we're not going to be making these decisions. Council is going to make these decisions, not staff.
Right, so thank you for helping us with that timing.
Sure. May I follow up on our Mayor Pro Tem Robbins's question from earlier in the session about savings, how we've built up the savings account over time? So our budget documents and the staff report only have the last couple of years, but I asked Elizabeth Ford, our consulting accountant, who's on Zoom, and she did email me the figures, and I'd like to just, I'm not able to display them, but I can tell you them. And it's the actual facilities and equipment account, there wasn't an actively set aside account just for this purpose until fiscal year ending 2017. And it was the former city manager, Joe Chin, and the council at the time that actively started, there might have been money that started to accumulate in the operating fund, but this actual set aside, proactive setting aside funds for this purpose of the Civic Center modernization started in fiscal year ending 2017, when there was a transfer of $375,000. The next year, it bumped up to $400,000. 2019, $831,000. $21 million. 2021, $2 million. 2022, $2.65 million. 2023, $1 million. 2024, $550,000, $100,000. Yeah. The current year, what is budgeted is $475,000. And then what we have in the budget for the coming year, a transfer, so that's actually budgeted, is $600,000. But in addition to that, I am proposing in this budget that $1 million of the operating reserve be transferred into it as well. So that's an increasing amount of funds that the council has been setting aside for this purpose. But please recall that in the 5-year financial forecast, after next year, the amount of money that we're able to budget towards this is decreasing. Yeah. Okay. Is that sufficient? And I'm happy to write that up and send that to you as well and figure out some kind of spiffy graph that Councilmember Salter asked for too. Okay. Thank you.
And I think some of that money was from the COVID, federal money that we received, like $500,000. No?
No, that funding was required to be spent either on expenses incurred as part of our response to COVID or to pay for the public safety. So that's specifically, we're not allowed to put that money into reserve. So it could have supplanted what we spend, but that money was, and that's what our reporting to the federal government is for responses to COVID.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other comments?
I just was going to add, there's going to be an election in June, I believe, of next year, because Damon Connolly has announced he's vacating his seat and running for Senate, I believe. So I just wanted everyone to know that as a potential opportunity for the bond measure. So I know you're going to work on these timelines, but they weren't sure if there was going to be an election in the spring or there's no primary. So, but now that Damon Connolly is doing that, there will be an election. So there will actually be an opportunity, just in terms of timing.
So that would mean that we'd have to have our project scope and funding and everything pretty much solidified by February. So, yeah.
I think we would have had an election anyways because it's the municipal. It's right now, your elections are every other year, they're in June. And you haven't made the change yet formally to move the municipal election to November. Once you make that change, then it would be November. But yes, all good to know, yeah, and we have to back it up. As I said, a lot of work that needs to be done, yeah.
All right, it's noon. So if there's no further comments or questions, or thank you, Krista, and thank you, staff, for such a thorough, excellent report and materials. Thank you, Liz, on Zoom for all your work. And we'll see you, May 8th? May 8th for the council meeting.
May 8th for the council meeting, yeah.
I just want to make a comment that, first of all, thank you to Liz Ford. Hopefully you're still can hear us. I know we look at this binder, the amount of work that goes into creating the budget is enormous, and I know each department plays their part. I'm one of the numbers people up here, and it's really comforting to see what a tight budget we run, the amount of money that you just sort of laid out. I think part of having that graph is helpful for the community to see how much that capital project plan has grown over time, which is really a testament to the way that the town is operating its budget, that it can put money towards paying down the liabilities and increasing our capital budget plan. So thank you to Liz and the entire staff for putting together such a great piece of work. And when many other towns are struggling to make any of their payments and pave their roads, the town of Ross is really well financed. So it's really a testament to the staff and obviously the council members who've been here longer. So thank you all for your stewardship.
Agree. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much.
Great. Good,
Yeah,
thank you for your
thank you.
time. Thank you for your time today and to staff, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we're adjourned.
Great, thanks.
There's one further item that's not on the agenda, which is that a truck hit a fire hydrant over in the parking lot. So if you parked over there, you do not need to wash your car. Okay? The post office, yeah. So Val's been texting me, that's how I know, and I know Chief Pata knows, and I know Rich knows, because I've seen you looking at your phone. All right.